Well, in the mid-70s, I was a pastor of Central Church, and we were on Poplar Avenue. And we had bought land out on Winchester, and it was a 50-acre plot. And part of the idea was to have athletic stuff, worship center, and some kind of a place for senior adults. And we got planning and realized that as we started planning that what area we had over there wasn't enough. So I had a friend who had been my pastor when I was in high school and, in Philadelphia. And I called him and told him what I had on my mind. He asked me to fly up. So I flew up to Philadelphia and realized we needed a campus of 50 acres alone for a retirement community. So that's kind of how it got started. It was going to be a part of the ministry of Central Church, but it never did become a part of the ministry of Central Church because for some reason the elders did not want to do it. So I started an independent board called Psalms Incorporated, and we incorporated and we did it with the blessing of the church, but without the church's backing. And it took us a while to raise the money, get the planning done, and all that kind of thing, but we actually opened in 1983 and been in business all those years. Well, the idea to have a retirement community was based on a lot of things, aging baby boomers. And there was another facility here, and it's still a good facility, but we wanted to do something maybe a cut above that, a little bit larger, and just primarily driven for ministry. And we even though we are a not-for-profit Christian institution, we're not exclusive for Christians. In other words, you can live here if you're not a Christian, as long as you can pay the bill, you can live here and don't cause any trouble, but you can live here. But it was a desire to minister is what it was. And we also realized after we got started that no single church could do it anyway, because it would take senior adults from a lot of different churches to have enough people to populate it to get it started. Well, that's a long story. And you'll probably run out of film before we get through with that one. But it all started when I was 15 years old. It's a long story, 50 years, 60-year story. But the fellow that I talked to in Philadelphia had been my pastor in Union City, and he was a young pastor at that time, and like most young pastors and young everything, he made some mistakes. And my dad was an elder in the church and helped him through some scrapes. I mean, nothing bad, nothing serious, nothing immoral, illegal, or fattening, just helped him. So when I contacted the man and told him we had this interest, he came down here and spent a couple of nights with my mother and father. And it just sparked in him a lot of memories. And so he said to us, if you really want to do it, I will forego the startup costs that I usually charge. And I've forgotten what that was. It wasn't quite $1 million, but it's a pretty good lick. And he gave us that to help us start it. So it dates all the way back to my high school years when I had this relationship with this man who, by the way, still living, still on our board today. Well, I hope it's the same that it always has been, and that's to provide excellent care for senior adults and affordable. Our first goal years ago, and the same one they had in Philadelphia, was to be able to offer good communal Christian living. If a person had been a homeowner, where you could sell your house for the buy-in and have at least one other source of retirement income other than Social Security. So it wasn't a high-rolling, very expensive, exclusive deal. We wanted it to be for real people who had worked hard and when they pooled their resources, they could live together better than they could live separately. I think the greatest advantage, other than the obvious, the health, and I think the greatest advantage of communal living as senior adults is what I've called socialization. Because as people grow older, they tend to draw in, live with themselves, their family's not there, they get a little crotchety. No, they get real crotchety. And but you see, the senior adults won't take it from each other. They kick their kids around and all that, but they don't do it to each other. And I think the greatest, other than the obvious, the unseen, the unadvertised benefit is the socialization. Well, actually, it's grown physically, obviously, because it looked like for a few years, every time you look up, we were building another 4-story unit to house. And then somewhere probably 15 years ago, we got into the concept of building some garden homes, and those have always been very popular. So there's been the physical growth, but I think also there has been the ministry growth because we have learned how. And I think another advantage is that we've had the same management since day one. And it's locally owned. It's owned by the board. It's a 501c3 owned by the board. So the board members, just like a church, I mean, the board members are responsible for the debt, so I guess they're the owners. There are no dividends paid, no investments, and it's not a profit-driven corporation. And therefore it provides a lifestyle for people that's not based on cutting costs to make money. So I just really like that concept. Well, one of the advantages of the community now as compared to when we started, communities all over the country, and by the way, they weren't that many, but those that were cataloged and we were able to examine, the person who lived in a community as opposed to someone who did not live in a community had a lifespan average expectancy of 4 years longer than they would if they had not lived in the community. Now, after 35 years, that's up to 11 years longer. And we've had sometimes as many as 4 or 5 people here at one time who are over 100. So it's really a healthy thing, both mentally and physically, and hopefully spiritual. If you take a bird's eye view of this, it looks like a spider, you know, all these wings out there. Well, that was done on purpose because people are not they don't want to take exercise. And if you force them to walk to where the food is, they will do it. So, I mean, that was on purpose. And some people groan and complain about having to walk so far to dinner, but that might be better for them than the food they eat because it makes them get out of their apartment, see people, have socialization, and get exercise. So we've learned those tricks. We've learned how to help people help themselves without forcing them to do it. Well, it's like a tapestry. There's so many different threads and colors and so forth. But the thing that you watch people move in, and first they're standoffish. And if they know somebody, they'll go sit with that person and just stick to that person. You know, we try to break that down and have somebody who's assigned to a new person. But the culture becomes a caring culture. And people who did not know each other or from different parts of the country or had different they never would have known each other in the world before they came here, suddenly become very concerned about each other. So it's a caring, loving community where when somebody does go on ahead, I mean, there's general mourning in the community because there's no such thing as a stranger unless a person chooses to be. And we don't let that go on very long. Yes, we needed to move anyway. And I don't like to move because I don't like to go through my stuff and make a decision about throwing something away, so I keep it all, which everybody does. And but we made a decision. We've been a little over 5 years. And it was a very good decision for us, health-wise. And I'm still a pastor. I'm still active pastor. My church is in Carnival. But the hospitals and a lot of things that I have to commute to this is halfway, so it's a great place for me to live. Plus the fact I work most nights, and by it being a gated community, my wife I can go off and do what I need to do, and she's protected and doesn't have to worry about being broken into. So it's a good decision for us. The one in Philadelphia was called ACTS, and it was an acronym for something adult, community, something or other. So I wanted to be more inclusive, to not rule out Jews and other people, so I use SALMS, Perpetual Senior Adult Life Ministry Services. That's what it stands for. Well, I sometimes speak to things like Chamber of Commerce and places like that, and there you have the epitome of good minds and good business practice, professional men and women. And what I say to them is, I say, you know, you're at the top of your game. You're the best in your field. You network at Chamber of Commerce, you're in leadership Memphis, you do these things. But you live with a chosen ignorance of aging and dying. And at that point, everybody gets real quiet. And I said, look, if you plan a business to be a good business, you plan for succession. You don't want your business to die when you retire or you're out of it. Why don't you do that with your life? And you plan for life insurance, but suppose you live to be 100. Where are you going to live? Who's going to take care of you? How are you going to make it? Those things need to be a part of your planning, because whether you like it or not, you are going to get older. Yeah, I think that what needs to be emphasized is that we provide life care. We don't offer it. And what I mean by that is, by being a pastor and running into people all over the community who are in other facilities, many of them think they have life care when they don't. And if you read the fine print of those contracts, they will say, well, why pay that money at Kirby for that buy-in when you might not need it? We offer the same thing. But what they fail to tell you is, yeah, you offer the same thing, but they jack the price up about $6,000 a month. Whereas in our financial setup from the very beginning, if you need these other, like the nursing home, or therapy and those kind of things, that comes with the deal, and you don't have to pay extra for it. So one of the original ideas we still practice it is the fact that if a couple moved in here and one of them became incapacitated and had to live in our backside in the manor, which is a glorified name for a nursing home. If one of you had to live there, the other would still be in the apartment. You're not separated. You don't have to get in a car to go see one another. You still have a relationship. Plus the fact you're not killed financially because you've already paid the price. It's provided, not offered.
That's wonderful. Love it. Anything else?
No, I think it's immoral for some of these other places to tell people that they offer the same thing, because a person thinks, well, they're going to give it to me. But they're not. Words are important. Provide or offer. Well, I think it's a bright future, because obviously people do get older. I look in the mirror every day, I'm reminded we do get older. When I started this place, I was 35 years old. I had no idea I'd ever be old enough to live here. And the first weekend we lived here, my granddaughter was spending the weekend with me, and I guess she was probably 5, 6, maybe 7. And I brought her to breakfast on Sunday morning, and she finished quicker than I got mine. And she looks up and she lets out, oh, Papa, you know what's wrong with this place? There are too many old people here. And I said, well, yeah, that's kind of the idea. But it's important that we do provide that kind of a camaraderie in a family, and people care for each other, and it gives them a better, richer life than they would have living by themselves.